Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Mona Ladrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. In today's podcast, I have chosen to address the subject of the Palestinian conflict that has affected the mental health of so many people around the world who feel despair and anxiety and anger that they cannot help these victims of atrocious war crimes. So this podcast will not be focusing on the political aspect of the situation, but rather the psychological aspect and how we can be more productive in protecting our mental health and helping the Muslims who are in need around the world. So it's not just for the Palestinians, it's for all Muslims who are suffering around the world. We have loads of Muslims who are suffering also in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, and in so many other countries. The Rohingya, the Chinese Muslims who are being slaughtered for, just saying La ilaha illallah. There are so many crimes that are happening around the world to Muslims that often get ignored when a war breaks out in Palestine. So the focus tends to all be on Palestine when other Muslims are suffering as well. So do bear in mind that, this podcast addresses all Muslims, inshallah, but primarily the situation in Gaza it really has gone too far. It's gone way too far. And it's become very scary, and the anxiety of people has really peaked because it could be an indication of the end of times. It could be an indication of the coming of the Mahdi. YouTube is currently flooded with so many videos about the Mahdi coming and the Dajjal, and it can really, terrify people. It can terrify people to believe and to actually, live in the reality and think about us actually facing this dilemma right now of living in the end of times with this war, because this war in particular has caught the attention of everybody because of how far the Zionists have pushed it this time. So, even I couldn't record a podcast in the last couple of weeks because my mind has been all over the place. We are getting swamped and bombarded with so much information. This is 24/7 on a daily basis. Every time you open Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok, Snapchat, whatever, apps you use to connect with other people, you will find, so many debates, loads of news coverage, lots of journalism, lots of pictures and videos taken from the war, lots of heavy campaigns, going on, the protests, people asking for money, heavy fundraising projects. And then you get people giving their opinions, you've got influencers talking about it, and, various celebrities, giving their 2 cents on the situation. And then you've got the Islamic perspective. So you get lots of imams and preachers and scholars who, speak about the end of times. And, even if it's not Islamic, you'll get the Jewish perspective, you'll get the Christian perspective. And it's just so overwhelming. And on top of that, when you get, sent loads of videos about the end of times and, the Mahdi and all of that, it can get too much. It really can get too much for someone who is already suffering from their own mental health problems. So I know that you might say, well, our mental health problems are nowhere near on the scale of those who are, going through war. Absolutely. This is 100% true. But when you expose yourself to so much content that doesn't benefit you, but rather drains you, drags you down, and worsens your mental health situation, you are not in the position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs you to be productive in order to help, other Muslims in need. So I'm going to break all of this down for you. I'm going to help you understand why they're going through this, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put them in this situation, and what is required from us as Muslims who are not in that situation of war to help them. So An-Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The parable of the believers in their affection, mercy and compassion for each other is that of a body. When any limb aches, the whole body reacts with sleeplessness and fever." This is in Sahih Bukhari. So in this hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's saying that when one part of the ummah suffers, the rest of the ummah will and should feel mercy and compassion for those who are suffering. Okay, so the first thing that you should understand is that if you are truly suffering, if you really feel that heartbreak on a deep level for what's happening to the Palestinians and Muslims all around the world, then know that you have a very good portion of empathy within you. Okay, that's the first thing that I would like you to acknowledge, because the Prophet Muhammad in this hadith addresses the believers. Okay, the believers who will feel that pain when they see their Muslim brothers and sisters suffering. So it is a good indication, if you are in that situation where you feel so sad, so upset at what's happening, this is a good indication that inshallah you have the empathy of a believer. Now the Prophet Muhammad he said this because he knows that there will be a portion of the ummah who will be Muslim narcissists, and these Muslim narcissists will not have that empathy and compassion for their brothers and sisters in Islam. They will take advantage of a situation. So this is a grand opportunity for a lot of narcissists to look good in society. And this can be, world leaders who donate a lot of money but don't actually care about the cause. It could be Muslim narcissists who want to look good in public and they do all this fundraising for Gaza, but deep inside they don't really care. They just care about looking good in society. So you will find Muslims, many Muslims, who don't have that deep love, care and compassion for the ummah like the believing Muslims do. So the Prophet Muhammad here, he wanted those empaths among us to know that if you feel this, then you have the empathy of a believer. Because like I said, there are many people out there who will donate and they'll do great things for crises like these, but they're not believers inside. Okay, so I just want to acknowledge for everyone who's listening, if you're in pain, this is a good indication of the state of your heart, inshallah. Now, the second thing I'd like to address is Ayah 286 in Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not burden any soul with more than what it can bear. Okay? So many people might say, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives these difficult calamities to people who are perceived to be as weak because they don't have a military, people who are maybe living in poverty, they don't have much. Why is it that the Palestinians and good people are consistently being tested with war? Why can't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just do something, to the enemy and get rid of them? Allah has the power to do so, right? He has the power to do it. If he wanted to make the earth swallow all of them, he could. But if he was to do that, the lessons that need to be learned by our leaders will not be learned. Allah cannot always come to the rescue when what is actually needed to be fixed is not being fixed. And that is, the coming together of the ummah, standing up for Palestine, standing up for other Muslims, and not allowing the enemy to destroy what our beloved prophets have worked so hard to build, and what Al-Khulafa Ar-Rashideen worked so hard to maintain, and what Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi fought so hard to protect. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 51, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء بعضهم أولياء بعض ومن يتولهم منكم فإنه منهم إن الله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. O believers, do not take the Jews or the Christians as your guardians. They are the guardians of each other. Whoever does so will be counted as one of them. Surely Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people. So in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not talking about the believing Jews and Christians. He's talking about the political Jews and Christians. So when Muslim leaders take these political Jews and Christians as their allies, as their partners, and as their protectors and guardians, then the whole ummah will fall apart. And that's the reason why the Palestinians are in this situation and the reason why other Muslims in other countries are in this situation, okay? It is not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has just chosen those people to be tested in this way. No, it is a consequence. It is a result of Muslims deviating from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws and His guidelines for war, His guidelines for politics, and His guidelines for the ummah. So if you are a leader of a Muslim country, then there are rules and guidelines that you have to abide by, and one of them is that you do not take the political Jews and Christians as your allies, because if you do, they will backstab you. They will cause you to do certain things and create foreign policies that are in the favour of them rather than Muslims. And this is why the ummah has suffered a great political downfall, okay? It's not because Allah is being tyrannical towards helpless people. It's Muslims who have done that to themselves. We lost the Khilafah because Muslims got so busy with chasing this dunya. You know, world leaders got busy with building palaces and chasing money and wanting to be the global superpower and, you know, holding on to that throne and, you know, wanting that authority on such a global scale that it was done at the expense of the ummah. It was done at the expense of vulnerable Muslims around the world. So now we have this political problem where loads of people want to go and help. They want to go and help people in Palestine and Iraq and Syria and, you know, all these other countries in which Muslims are suffering. But because of the foreign policies that are in place and the political climate that we're living in, people are unable to do so. And because of this, loads of men in particular are feeling helpless, useless, worthless in this entire situation. Like they want to go and help, but they can't. Because if they do, then they will have to face a plethora of detrimental consequences. So this entire situation, the world that we live in today, has come as a result of world leaders, imams, scholars, preachers, everyone in authority not following the guidelines and the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Imran, ayah 182, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. So this ayah is addressing everybody who finds themselves in a situation that has come as a consequence of not following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidelines. So he says, this situation or this consequence is for what your hands have brought forth, and because Allah is never unjust to His servants. Okay, so there will be situations that we put ourselves in, whether it's as an ummah, whether it's, you know, on a personal level, where we are now feeling like we're being punished, but it's not a punishment. Allah's not punishing us for the hell of it. Allah is showing us the consequence of what we have done. The consequence of not following His rules. The consequence of not fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a certain situation. So the political situation that we find ourselves in, the world that we find ourselves in, has come as a result of this. Alright? And that's why Muslims are suffering around the world. It's not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided that they are tested in this way. These are people who are being tested as a result of the situation that we find ourselves in politically. And it's also come as a result of our scholars not being able to have any kind of authority over the political system. So the political system is stronger than the Sharia. And this, of course, was different in the Islamic Golden Age because the priority was given to Islamic law. And as a result, political systems were based on Islamic law. So there was no tyranny, there was no injustice. So after the whole Khilafah fell, we entered a new era in which the man-made political systems had more importance over Islamic law. And when that happens, you will find that world leaders will fight each other over power and dominance rather than justice. So if we go back to the ayah of لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, you will understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put the Palestinians and other Muslims in the hardships of war because they have been equipped with enough iman to be able to withstand that hardship, to be able to handle that hardship, even if it looks on the outside to us that they can't handle it, that it's too much for them. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that they can. They have been going through this for the last 100 years. And there has been no nation on this planet who have scared the enemy of Islam more than the Palestinians. The Palestinians are not normal Muslims. They are not your average Muslims. They are Muslims who have been born and raised in one of the most blessed parts of this world. And not just that, show me anywhere in the world where a child has no fear of the enemies who come to them in tanks. They have rocks and stones and they're brave. They have that courage to scare an entire nation of enemies who have to get weapons sent in from America and other countries to help them fight children who are holding rocks and stones. That is how much the children of Palestine terrify them. And they terrify them for a number of reasons. The first reason being that they actually believe in what's going to come from the scriptures, from the Torah and the Bible and the Quran. They already know Palestine is going to be victorious. I'm going to come on to that later. They already know that this is a blessed land. They already know that the Muslims will be victorious, and that is why young boys in particular are a great threat to them. They're a great threat because if these young boys are that brave as children, what are they going to be like as grown men? They're unbeatable, undefeatable as men. So they have to target the children. The same way Pharaoh targeted the boys from Bani Israel and ordered his army to kill all of their children, all of their young boys, because he heard that there would be a prophet among them. These people know, they believe that, the believers are going to be victorious, and they can't have it. They are challenging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are challenging what's been written in hadith. And so even a child, even a 5-year-old child, is a threat to them. Is there more power than that for a believer? Is there more honor than that for a believer that places a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old Palestinian boy as a threat to an army of grown men who have to attack these boys with guns and weapons and bombs and tanks? Can you understand the level of fear they have of brave Muslim children, brave Muslim teenagers? They fear who these boys and teenagers will grow into. So when you look at it that way, we already know that Palestinian children are born into this situation, so they are already prepared from a young age to fight these battles. They have been chosen as the warriors of Allah. They have been chosen as His soldiers to protect Al-Aqsa. It's not that they are the disadvantaged among us. They are among the most honourable of all Muslims who have died and who continue to live. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the heartland of the believers is Sham. He didn't say Mecca. He didn't say Medina. He said Sham. Sham is Palestine, Syria, these countries, because they are protecting the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and all the other prophets. They're protecting this legacy from childhood. These are the soldiers of Allah. The Palestinians have shown us that the soldiers of Allah are not necessarily adults. The soldiers of Allah, the warriors of Allah, are also the children and the teenagers who are fighting for their country, who are fighting for their deen, fighting to protect Al-Aqsa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Imran, ayah 139, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. So do not weaken in your faith and do not grieve, and you will be the superior if you are true believers. They have that steadfastness, mashallah, they have it. They have it. And remember when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the angels in the Battle of Badr, when the Prophet Muhammad and the Sahaba, they worried about being outnumbered by the enemy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent them thousands of angels to help them, and Iblis fled. I mentioned it in a previous podcast. There's something that a lot of people are failing to recognize in the Palestinian conflict. So if we take a step back and look at the situation of, armies of grown men and women in tanks, bombing Gaza, attacking children, attacking women, attacking the vulnerable, and they're clearly more powerful, right? They have more machinery, equipment, weapons, they have more of everything. They have more support globally and politically for their cause, right? For this injustice, for this genocide. They have more support than the Palestinians do. So when you look at the scenario, when you look at what is happening, it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Why is it that these children who are defending themselves, defending their land, defending their homes, why are they such a threat to the Israelis? Why are they such a threat? Why are they terrifying them so much? Because it doesn't make sense. They have everything. They have everything in their power to conquer and destroy Gaza. They could have done it a long time ago. What's stopping them? What is allowing the Palestinians to continue in their victory against the Israelis? And I believe it's because there's something that we can't see, that the enemy can. Perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent thousands and thousands of angels to help the Palestinians fight this war. We can't see them, the Palestinians can't see them, but the Israelis can. So perhaps the 20 children whom they see in front of them, pelting them with stones and rocks, are actually 200 in their eyes. Maybe they are seeing 200 children, and that's why they are so determined to wipe out all the Palestinians, because they see them as being so many. There are too many. There are too many powerful children. There are too many powerful teenagers and powerful men. How do we know that they are not seeing far more people than we are? How do we know? We don't know that. But what I do know is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send angels to help those who are believers and fighting the enemy, because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us that He would do in the Battle of Badr. And that's what He did to aid the Sahaba and aid the believers. So it's the only explanation for it. It's the only thing I could think of that would make these people, these beasts, do this to vulnerable Palestinians. But they're not being seen as vulnerable. They are being seen as great armies in the eyes of the enemy, because there are angels we can't see. There are angels we can't see who are protecting the Palestinians. And the evidence for that is, until now, the Israelis cannot be victorious. They have not been victorious until now. And there's a reason for that. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "How blessed is Sham?" And the Sahaba asked him, "Oh, why is that, O Prophet?" And he replied, "I see the angels of the Most Merciful spreading their wings all over it." This is narrated in the Tirmidhi. He also said, "It is the place of Judgment Day where everyone will be called. So come and pray in it, for one prayer in it is like 1,000 prayers elsewhere." Again, narrated in Tirmidhi. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also said, "The best of the inhabitants of earth will reside where Prophet Ibrahim a.s. migrated," and that was to Jerusalem. And this is in Sunan Abu Dawud. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also said, The Quran was revealed in 3 places: Mecca, Medina, and Sham. So always remember that Palestine, it's the resting place of many prophets. It's a holy land. It's a land that's protected by angels. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never allow the enemy to destroy it. And always remember as well that many prophets went through so many hardships. So many Sahaba and Sahabiyat got martyred in Mecca. They got martyred in Medina. And there will be many martyrs also in Palestine, because these are the 3 holiest places for Muslims on the planet. And those who protect those holy places will have the highest ranks of martyrdom. So these are people who are very much beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are not going through these hardships in vain. We still have a very strong essence of Islam in the world because of these people. Because they are the ones protecting Al-Aqsa Mosque. They are the ones who are protecting it. Without their protection of it, God knows where we'd be as an ummah. We might not exist anymore. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Verily the martyrs of Allah on the earth are the trustees of Allah on earth among His creation. They are killed or they die." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us in Surah Al-Imran, Ayah 169, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. And never think of those who are martyred in the cause of Allah as dead. In fact, they are alive with their Lord, well provided for in Jannah. So the reward of the martyr is that he goes fast track, or she goes fast track to Jannah. There is no questioning in the grave for them. There is no day of judgment for them. There is no hisab. There is no accounting for them. Their martyrdom has earned them Jannah with no accounting. And this is the honour, one of the honours that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the martyr who fights for His sake, who fights to protect the Holy Land, who fight to protect His word, who fight to protect the lands in which our beloved prophets were buried in. And I'll tell you something else that a lot of scholars do not teach, which I find really important for the comforting of Muslims who are watching this genocide. That Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "The martyr does not feel the pain of being killed except as one of you feels the pinch of an insect bite." This is in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, it's Sahih Hadith. Okay? So what we see in regards to them being tortured and slain and shot, they don't actually feel it, even though it may appear to us that they do. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that the martyr is saved from the pain and the anguish of that physical torture. So when anyone sees an enemy or an attacker, running towards them or firing at them, you're going to wince and you're going to be in a state of shock and you're going to be in a state of fear. So it looks like they are being tortured physically, but they're just preparing themselves for the hit. So they're preparing themselves for that pain, and they don't feel it. SubhanAllah, Allah gives them a swift death that they do not feel. And this is hadith sahih, that all they feel is a pain that is the equivalent of an insect bite. And this is out of mercy. This is out of mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the shuhada. Now, some will get wounded and they'll feel that pain because they haven't died from it. But those who die as shuhada from a gunshot wound or a blade or whatever, they will not feel that they have died a miserable, painful death. They don't feel it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken that away from them. And we have evidence of this as well, of Allah doing this to Ibrahim alayhi salam. If you look at Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 69, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Allah said to the fire, when Ibrahim was thrown into the fire by his people who were against him and against the message he came with, Allah told the fire be coolness and safety for Ibrahim. So it looked to everyone else that he had been thrown into a scorching hot fire, but he actually was saved from the burning of it because Allah had ordered the fire to be a coolness and a safety for him. So what we see is not necessarily what's actually happening. And this, again, is given to us as a comfort. So when we are given this hadith, we understand what it means by this ayah and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved Ibrahim alayhi salam from, as someone who was going to be martyred for the sake of Allah, simply for saying La ilaha illallah and asking other people to believe in that too. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already told us, we already know that the believers will always be victorious. Anyone who fights fi sabilillah to protect Islam, to protect Allah's word, to protect holy lands, to protect their homes and their families, all of that will be rewarded, all of that will be protected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised victory, the same way He promised victory to all the prophets and He promised victory to the Khalifas. All the believers will be victorious in the end. And at the moment, we are looking at narcissism and psychopathy on a global scale. This is the worst of it. What we are witnessing now really is the worst of it. This is the highest level of psychopathy. And these people are the worst amongst all humans. They're even worse than Iblis, because Iblis is actually a believer in Allah. Iblis actually knows a day of judgment is coming. Iblis actually knows that the Muslims will be victorious at the end of the day. He knows. So these shayateen al-ins who are fighting against the believers with full arrogance are actually worse than Iblis. They're actually worse because they are not taking into account that a day of judgment is coming. And even if they know a day of judgment is coming, even if they know and they understand from the Quran and the Torah and the Bible that, a Mahdi is coming to save Palestine. A Mahdi is coming to liberate Palestine. That these people will be the losers and that the Muslim believers will be the victorious. Even if they believe in all of that, they are still persevering because they are also challenging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are challenging the qadr of Allah. They are challenging what's been written and prophesied in hadith. So whether they are believers or not in Allah, in a day of judgment, in all the future events that are yet to happen, like the coming of Isa alayhi salam, he will descend in Palestine on the wings of angels and he will be the one to kill the Dajjal. He will come after the Mahdi. All of these events, many of them know that they're coming. They know that they're coming, but their arrogance makes them believe, their egos make them believe that they can change the qadr, they can change the fate of future events. They can change the outcome by preparing themselves for the coming of Isa alayhi salam, for preparing themselves for the coming of the Mahdi. And they are preparing themselves by eliminating as many boys as they can, as many children, teenagers, young men, because the Prophet ﷺ said that it will be these boys who will grow into young men and they will form the armies of those who will have the final victory in this entire story. And that's why they want to get rid of them, because they know this is happening. They know it's going to happen. And they fear what will happen to them if they were to follow the events as they have been written in the hadith and in their own scriptures. So they have to try their best to turn it around so it works out in their favour. But always know that the believers will have victory. No matter what happens, no matter how many people get killed in the process, all of these people are shuhada. They have the highest ranks with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are residing with the prophets right now. Can you imagine that? That is so mind-blowing, just to even think of that. That they are with Jibreel alayhi salam, they are with the other prophets and the other Sahaba right now. All of those who have died, they are there in Jannah with these amazing people. And we're still here. we're still here. We are the ones who have to battle with our jihad and nafs. We are the ones who, we have to make the best of what we have for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's their test that they have to go through. That's their hardship, because they are in that situation where, they need to protect Masjid al-Aqsa. Their hardship is going to be harder than everyone else's. And it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them an honourable position to be able to do that. They are the defenders of Masjid al-Aqsa. And that's where the Qibla used to be. Al-Qibla used to be towards Jerusalem. And because of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Allah directed it towards Mecca, because Mecca was more beloved to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So it was the first Qibla. Anas radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "No one who enters paradise would like to return to the dunya, even if they could have everything on earth, except for the martyr. They will wish to return to the dunya and be killed 10 more times due to the reward that they see from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for their martyrdom." This is in Sahih Bukhari. So can you imagine, after all that suffering, all that war, all that torture, the only people who would wish to come back to this dunya would be the martyr. And they would want to be killed 10 more times, fi sabilillah, because of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them in Jannah. I mean, imagine having homes near the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine being in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence. That is the honour of the shaheed. And because of that honour and everything that they see in Jannah that they got as a reward for what they went through, they're the only people who would want to come back. Everyone else would say, no, keep us in Jannah. We would never want to go back to the dunya. And the other types of people who would wish to come back to the dunya are the oppressors. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Mu'minun, ayah 99, حتى إذا جاء أحدهم الموت قال رب ارجعون لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت كلا إنها كلمة هو قائلها ومن ورائهم برزخ إلى يوم يبعثون. When death approaches any of these oppressors, they say, "My Lord, let me go back. Let me go back to the dunya, so that I may do good in what I left behind and change my fate." But Allah says, never. It is only a useless appeal that they make when it's too late. And there is a barrier behind them of the barzakh until the day they are resurrected. So the barzakh is the waiting area, the spiritual waiting area, where all the punishments of the grave happen. It's the waiting area for everyone who dies until the Day of Judgment. So you're either rewarded in the grave or you're punished in the grave, and that all happens in the barzakh. Some of it happens in the grave physically, and other punishments happen in the spiritual realm of the barzakh. So those are the only two types of people who would ever wish to go back. The believers will be the martyrs, and the non-believers, those who have been shown their ultimate fate, will be the oppressors, who are horrified at the reality of their situation, and they beg Allah to send them back to the dunya so that they can be different. So this should give us more faith and more conviction in what we believe in. We know that there will be so many Muslims who will die fi sabilillah. We already know this because it's happened. It's happened since the beginning of time. But due to a lack of education, due to a lack of living in environments in which our faith can flourish, we tend to look at the situation of the world and other Muslims as being unfortunate, as being unfair. Now, if we look at it politically, then yes, there is a great deal of injustice. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns it around for them. So we know that when we look at it from a spiritual perspective, an Islamic perspective, that there is justice in every hardship that a believer goes through. Allah will always make it worthwhile. He will always reward every hardship, every pain, every struggle. So we as believers, we need to look at the situation as an unfortunate one, because it's terribly sad and it's heartbreaking that the ummah has come to this, that we are so broken that we have to now watch our brothers and sisters get slaughtered and go through a genocide and, go through all this ethnic cleansing and horrific crimes. But at the same time, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them victory. So the state of the ummah is indeed heartbreaking. This is what we grieve. We grieve the loss of an ummah that we once had. We grieve the loss of such a powerful nation that we used to be, where there was no oppression, there was no poverty, there was no fear, there was none of this, genocide. This is the worst genocide that we've seen with the Palestinians so far. None of this would have happened in the Islamic Golden Age. And that's what we grieve. That is where our despair comes from. But as a believer, as Muslim believers, we cannot despair in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot despair in His divine decree, because Allah knows best. Allah already knows victory is coming. Allah knows that Mahdi is coming. Allah knows that these people will have the highest ranks in Jannah. And He knows that the dunya will be a pin drop in the ocean in comparison to forever in Jannah. This world is so short, it's so temporary. To the martyr, when they look back on what they had to suffer for the sake of protecting the Holy Lands and protecting their people and peace and Islam and everything, they will wish to come back, because they realize how temporary it was, how short this life was. It was nothing to them. They will realize it was nothing. They would do it 100 times over if they could for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we have to have belief in as believers, to get us through these hardships, to get us through, having to watch our Muslim brothers and sisters go through these war crimes and be victims to such tyrannical people. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never going to side with oppressors who cannot even maintain basic etiquettes of war. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he instructed his soldiers before they entered war to not engage in the following things. Do not kill any child, any woman, or any elder or sick person. Do not practice treachery or mutilation of bodies. Do not uproot or burn palm trees or cut down fruit trees. Do not slaughter a sheep or a cow or a camel except for food. If one fights his brother, he must avoid striking the face, for God created him in the image of Adam. Do not kill the monks in monasteries, and do not kill those sitting in places of worship. Do not destroy the villages and towns. Do not spoil the cultivated fields and gardens, and do not slaughter the cattle. Do not wish for an encounter with the enemy. Pray to Allah to grant you security, but when you are forced to encounter them, exercise some patience. No one may punish with fire except the Lord of the fire. And accustom yourselves to do good if people do good, and do not do wrong even if they commit evil. So war crimes were always committed by oppressors since the times of the prophets. If you look at the battle of Al-Khandaq, the battle of the ditch that happened after the battle of Uhud, when the oppressive tribes of Mecca came to fight the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in Medina, and they were put under a 30-day siege in which the believers were deprived from food, water, and access to basic essentials. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had dug a trench around the city of Medina, and it was the defense that they had. And the tribes that were actually led by Abu Sufyan at the time, they were getting restless because they couldn't cross the trench because the Muslims were defending it, and their animals were dying of war wounds, and they were getting hungry, and they were getting tired, and the harsh winds of Medina at the time, because remember they were in the desert, they were also presenting a great challenge for the enemy tribes. So while the Muslims were sheltered against, the desert winds and everything, despite them not having any food and essential needs at the time, because the Quraysh tribes were not going away, they were standing there waiting for the Muslims to get weak so that they could cross the trench. they ultimately got tired and they realised that, the Muslims are not going to give up. And the tribe of Banu Qurayza eventually surrendered to the Muslims as they had accepted a duel to end the battle. And it was Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu who was sent by the Prophet Muhammad to this challenge, and he won the battle for the Muslims. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always going to be there for the Muslim believers. Always, always. Like, there is no doubt about it whatsoever. Because the oppressors will always be punished for not maintaining or even complying or respecting the etiquettes of war. They are doing everything that Islam forbids in war. Even the trees, there are blessed trees in Palestine that will start speaking to the Muslim believers, telling them that, the enemy is hiding behind them so that they can come and attack them and protect themselves from them, that even those trees are being cut down by the Israelis because they believe. They know that that day is coming. They know that these are blessed trees that will speak, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will let them grow again and fulfill their mission in this dunya. So the soldiers of Allah are many. They can be trees, plants, birds, animals. They could be so many creatures whom we don't know about because Allah has assigned for them a mission that we will only see in the end of times. So always know and have faith, have that deep faith that even though you see a lot of Muslims suffering, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always give victory to the believers, and these are the people who will be given the highest ranks of Jannah because of their hardships, because they are the warriors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet Muhammad said, "No fatigue, nor disease, nor sorrow, nor sadness, nor hurt, nor distress befalls a Muslim believer, even if it were the prick he receives from a thorn, but that Allah expiates some of their sins for that." This is in Sahih Bukhari. So if a believer is going through all of these difficult emotions, even if you get pricked by a thorn, you have some of your sins erased for that, because you are precious to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your body, your mental health, the way you feel, your feelings, your heart, all of that's precious to Allah. So any distress that you go through, even if it's when you see other people in distress and you feel their pain, you'll get rewarded for that. So if we get rewarded for the prick of a thorn, then imagine their scale of reward. Don't feel bad for them in the sense that, they're being slaughtered for no reason whatsoever. There is a reason for them. There is a purpose for them in this life. And they are fulfilling their own mission. They're fulfilling their own purpose in this dunya, which is to be the soldiers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to protect the Holy Land. They are fulfilling their own mission. This is their mission. This is their purpose in this life. We all have a different purpose. We all have a different mission. Some more important than others, but we all have one. Okay? So even though the believers do not have the machinery and the weapons and the support of, those who should be supporting them in power, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equipped them and helped them with angels whom we can't see. Because it is not even possible, logically, for an army that has the support of so many world leaders and has the support of being equipped with so many weapons, how they until now cannot be victorious against a nation of people who don't have any of those things. So know for sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting them. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending them angels to help them fight this war. Do not grieve for their losses. Their losses are celebrated in Jannah. Their losses are celebrated. It's not seen as a loss in Islam. It's seen as a gain. Jannah has gained another martyr. Every time Jannah gains another martyr, they celebrate. It's a celebration. This world is but a fleeting moment. So it's their persistence and their iman that keeps them going. It's their persistence and their iman that makes them stronger. They are able, mashallah, to be so resilient. They are so tolerant and so strong against the evil that is out there because Allah has allowed them to be that way. He's given them the strength and the iman to be that way. They are not your average Muslim. You are looking at these people in the same way you look at yourself. Because when you look at your own situation, you think, I can't even handle my husband or my children who are tyrannical towards me and rude and disrespectful. How could I ever be in a situation of war where I have to fight the enemy? You are putting yourself in their shoes when that's a very difficult thing to do, because if you put yourself in their shoes with your level of iman and mental state, you wouldn't be able to even comprehend how they can cope. You can't. And because you're not able to comprehend what they're going through and the strength that they have to endure these hardships, you break down and you get depressed and you feel despair at not being able to help them. Allah is already helping them. Okay, Allah's already helping them. And a lot of people say, what can we do? What can we do to help these people? The first thing that everyone has to do, everyone who is a believer has to do, is to have full conviction and iman in these hadiths and these Quran verses. When you make dua for them, don't make dua in vain. Do not make dua thinking that it's not going to do anything. When you make a dua and you're doing it just for the sake of praying, that dua doesn't become powerful for you, because it's not done with that sincere conviction that they will be victorious, that Allah is helping them, that Allah is giving them justice, that Allah is not punishing them, and that Allah is going to be there for them and give them the highest reward in Jannah, and that they are going to be compensated for all of this loss. It's still a loss. They're still human beings. They still feel grief and sadness and loss. They're going to grieve over the loss of their beloved children and their husbands and their wives and their parents. They're human beings. They're going to grieve. This is all a part of the process. And like I said before, there is no sorrow, nor sadness, nor grief that isn't compensated for. It's a part of life. We're going to feel these losses in one way or another, but they feel them to a much higher scale than we do, because this is happening daily. These losses are happening daily for them. They're losing their homes, they're losing their communities, they're losing everything that they love, their livelihoods, their businesses, everything. They're losing everything. And the most important thing that they need from us is sincere conviction in our dua. When we make dua with the belief that they will be successful, they will be victorious. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aids them with angels to help them. We pray that Allah compensates them and that He makes their losses easier upon them, that He makes death easier upon them, the same way He made the fire cool for Ibrahim alayhi salam. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lessens the suffering of those who are going through all of this fear and turmoil and hardships and genocide. We need to pray with full conviction that everything the Prophet Muhammad has taught us about martyrs is true. Because when you pray and you say to yourself, well, I've been praying for ages for the Palestinians and other Muslims, and their situation isn't getting better, it's actually getting worse. My dua is not helping. It's not helping at all. That's a lack of iman, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give victory when He wants it to happen. Something has to change for victory to happen, and there's a time for that. The right time hasn't come yet for that ultimate victory. Okay? In Allah's eyes, all of these people who are being killed, they're not a loss. They're not a loss. It's a gain. We can't see it because we cannot know or determine when that time will come, when the Palestinians will have their final victory, when Al-Aqsa is liberated. We don't know when the Mahdi will come. We have no idea. He may be born now. He may be a young man now. We don't know. But all we know is that the signs of the Mahdi coming, I'm not going to dive deep into who the Mahdi is. There are so many YouTube videos about the Mahdi. But we already know that the signs of the Mahdi are here. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows when it's best for the Palestinians to have their victory. We have to be patient. We have to be patient and trust that Allah knows what He's doing. Don't despair in your du'as not being answered. Work more on your du'a, having more conviction within it, having more iman. I hope this podcast, inshallah, will help you to build that iman up, because all of this has been written about. All of this has been taught to us by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And we can't lose hope. We can't lose hope in the believers having victory in the end. So we know they're going to be victorious. It's just painful to watch them in the process of, having to live through all of these war crimes. It's painful. It's really painful. And it doesn't benefit us. And it doesn't benefit our iman when we subject ourselves to so much coverage on this situation. Yes, we need to be compassionate and we need to always be praying for them. When you get up for tahajjud, pray for them. Pray that Allah eases their suffering, increases their blessings of angels, and that Allah gives them a swift victory. Just continue with this dua. Continue with this dua because it's coming. You're going to get reward for this dua. On the Day of Judgment, you're going to be presented as someone who prayed with conviction for them. You're going to get reward for it. You're going to get recognized for it. So continue with doing that. Okay, that victory is coming. And in the meantime, you need to protect your mental health. It is your obligation as a Muslim to also protect your mental health. So if every time you open social media or the news and you just see really depressing debates, really depressing news and images and videos of children being killed, children being deprived from water and food and, all of that. If it's getting too much for you, I honestly tell you that it's absolutely fine for you to completely switch off from it. Actually, you have to. Because you do not benefit yourself, you do not benefit your deen, you do not benefit your iman. If you feel at the end of the day, after watching all of this, what's the point? What's the point in living? Why is Allah doing this to them? Why does Allah not save them? Why does Allah not destroy the enemy? Why this and why that? Why are my du'as not being answered? Millions of people are praying for the Palestinians. Why is nothing happening? Why are other Muslims in other countries, being bombed and tortured as well? Why is this ummah never coming together? What's the point? What's the point in living? And then what will happen is that your iman will start to deplete. This is what your qareen is doing to you, by the way. Iblis will attack you in these moments. Iblis will attack you when the Muslims are being attacked, because Iblis wants you to see. He wants you to see the situation as a hopeless one. He wants you to see it like that. He doesn't want you to focus on the hope that Allah gives us in the Quran and the hope that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gives us in the Ahadith. He doesn't want you to focus on those. He sends his shayateen al-jinn and shayateen al-ins to create confusion in you. So when the celebrities you look up to and the psychologists you look up to and these influencers you look up to, when they're all saying that the Palestinians are at fault, they're standing with Israel, they're standing with the oppressor, now they're causing confusion because you thought that this person was a smart guy or a smart woman. You really admired them for their knowledge. You really admired them for their bravery. You really admired them for standing up for human rights before. And now when it comes to this war, they stand up for Israel. They stand up for the oppressor. It's going to create confusion in you. You might even start thinking, am I in the right here? Are they right in saying that there's no God? Are they right in saying that the Palestinians deserve this? That Israel has the full right to defend themselves? That they are the victim in this situation? You'll start to question yourself because the people you look up to are saying things that you did not expect them to say. people, again, who have been campaigning for human rights for a very long time, you admire them for that. And all of a sudden, when it comes to the affairs of the Muslims, the affairs of the Palestinians and Gaza, they say otherwise. This can affect you because you look up to them. Switch off from these stupid debates. Honestly, there are some people out there who are debating this situation, debating this politically, debating this on a personal level, and they are absolute nobodies in society. Why listen to them? Who cares about their opinion? Who cares about their political opinion on the situation? Hold on to your faith. Hold on to your faith and believe in that hope. Believe and hold on to that hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. We need to change our focus to that, okay? Because if we don't, we're going to start getting affected by Western media. Even if we're not affected by it in our iman, we're going to get angry. The more we listen to Western media coverage on the situation, the more angry we're going to get, the more it's going to frustrate us. We're not going to be able to work or focus or enjoy life or do anything in life. We can't be productive in life. How many people do you know, honestly, including myself, who have really struggled to get past the events of the last 2 weeks? I really struggled to record a podcast last week because my frame of mind was not in the right place to be able to record anything because of everything that I was looking at on social media. It's frustrating to see people of influence and power stand up for the oppressor when they are life coaches and counsellors and therapists, and it's like, wow. Jordan Peterson, for example, was a huge letdown for me because he's always talking about people who are victimised, vulnerable people, women who are abused. He empathises with them. He'd even cry in some of his videos talking about victims. But when it came to this situation, he was brutal in his response, and he encouraged, the enemy to kill the Palestinians. What the hell happened there with Jordan Peterson? He's just one of many who I've seen on social media who've really been a letdown. Because a lot of people look up to him. A lot of people perceive him as a highly intelligent man, a highly empathic man. He's a psychologist. He knows what he's talking about. And then when it came to Muslims, when it came to Arabs, he didn't care about psychology. He didn't care about mental health. He didn't care about victimization and war crimes. He didn't care about any of that. So be careful who you listen to. Be careful who you look up to. Be careful who you take information from. This is why I've created this channel, because all these life coaches and psychologists, at the end of the day, the majority of these famous ones are non-Muslims. We need our own channel. We need our own Islamic perspective on psychological issues, because if we keep taking our information from non-Muslims and Zionists and, people who are anti-Islam and covert, those coverts who are anti-Islam and anti-Muslims, then we're going to get hugely disappointed when we see their true colours later. So I've created this channel so we could have our own platform to discuss important matters in psychology and mental health. So these people whom you look up to can create confusion in your iman. And if they don't, like I said, they will just stir up anger and resentment and bitterness. And then what's going to happen is that conflicts are going to happen on a personal level. Now you've got issues with your work colleagues who are standing up for Israel. Now you've got issues with your neighbours and your non-Muslim friends who are, opposing you in your beliefs on this war. And you will start to lose relationships. You'll start to lose relationships with non-Muslims and, people whom you feel have really let you down. You feel lonely. You will feel victimized as well. I'm even hearing about crimes that are happening, attacks on Palestinians and Jews. I'm not excluding Jews from this, like believing Jews who are empathic. I'm not excluding them from this, because even they are getting attacked in, certain areas in America. Like, so much evil is coming out of this. And where does that come from? Junud Iblis. The soldiers of Iblis, who are everyone's qareens, are working on everyone at the moment. Iblis does not want you to have any hope in this war. He doesn't want you to have faith. He doesn't want you to have that sincere belief and a good perception of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this whole situation. He wants you to see Allah as a big letdown. And a lot of people are talking about this online in forums. Where is Allah in all of this? This comes from Iblis. This comes from your qareen. Don't let your qareen mess with your iman in situations like this, because it's very easy to lose hope. It's very easy to lose your iman when you are seeing a situation that Allah is not salvaging immediately. People want Allah to rescue the believers immediately. It doesn't work like that. There are things that have to be addressed and fixed before the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can come. There are events that need to happen before the help of Allah can come in a way that we see it. The help of Allah is already there with the angels, but it's because we can't see it. We don't believe that Allah has come to the rescue of the believers when He has. And He is already doing His work for the believers. We can't see it. So those big events that are coming, that will be apparent for us to see, like the coming of the Mahdi and, the freeing of Palestine and the return of Isa alayhi salam, all of that, these are events that we will see with our own eyes. Some people are waiting for that. Everyone's like, oh, when's this Mahdi coming? When is this Mahdi coming? Allah's already sending His help, but you can't see it. Why are you waiting for the Mahdi to come to acknowledge that Allah is sending His help to the believers? Acknowledge that the help is already there. Okay? Acknowledge that Allah will never side with oppressors who commit war crimes. Salah ad-Din freed his prisoners during a very harsh winter because he wasn't able to provide them with warmth, shelter, food and drink. He freed them because he didn't want to be accountable for a war crime which resulted in prisoners, even though they were the enemy, which resulted in them dying from starvation. If they were to die, they would die on the battlefield. They wouldn't be dying at the hands of a Muslim from starvation or the extreme cold or not having water to drink. That is not a part of the war. So when you have war prisoners, even if they are the enemy and you fear harm from them, you have to let them go, because it's the more merciful thing to do to the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the more fair thing to do. I keep you as a prisoner if I can fulfill your basic human needs. And if I cannot, then you're free to go. You're free to go because I will not be held accountable by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for harming His creation and removing their dignity. Because it's in your hands now. It's in your hands whether you feed them or not. It's not out of your control. They are not put in a famine or a drought that has been sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which makes it out of your control. If people die from starvation and thirst, it now becomes your decision as to whether or not you have mercy on the prisoner and, fulfilling their basic human needs. So they are committing every type of war crime you can think of, and yet people believe that they will be victorious. That's complete delusion. That delusion comes from the qareen. Their qareen makes them believe that, yes, they are the victim. They are the ones who are being oppressed. It's complete and utter delusion that comes from the qareen. Remember what I said before in previous podcasts, where I mentioned that the qareen will make you delusional about people? He will make you see good people as bad people and bad people as good people. And you will attract bad people into your life because of the way they make you delusional. It's the same in this situation. Even though the facts are there, it's very clear who's in the wrong. It's very clear who the true victim is. People will still stand for the oppressor because they are ruled by their qareen. Another thing that people are not aware of in these crises is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows a situation to get this bad in war and with Muslims in general, it creates more of a public awareness about Islam. And when a public awareness is made about Islam, there's a lot of dawah work that can happen, okay? So there's no excuse for people on the Day of Judgment to say, well, we never heard about Islam. We never heard about this faith. Allah will say to them, you have no excuse, because this Palestinian conflict has allowed the message of Islam to reach every corner of the globe. So everyone will be educated about Islam through the Palestinian conflict. People will ask, why is this war happening? Why is Jerusalem so important? Why are the Palestinians being so oppressed? And so the more they look into it, the more they will come across the videos of scholars and imams who speak about, the religious significance of these wars and the coming of the Mahdi and everything. So it's actually allowing a lot of people to receive da'wah. And not only that, but because of what's happening, especially now when they see that Israel really is the oppressor and that they would be better off standing for the rights of Muslims, it can encourage them to actually become Muslim because they see the resilience and the strength of the Palestinians. These situations can actually encourage people on a spiritual journey. The spiritual journey will lead them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it will open their heart to Islam. So don't underestimate what Allah's plan is. Do not think that Allah does not know what He is doing. Allah will open doors for other people to join Islam, to become believers and strengthen this ummah. And sometimes a war has to be this brutal for the greater good. When a war is this brutal, everyone will know about it. Everyone will talk about it. There will be an awareness of it everywhere. And the more brutal the oppressor is to the victim, the more it will backfire on them later. Because now people are starting to wake up to the oppression of the Israelis when they may have been blind to it before. So Allah has allowed them, وَنَمُدَّهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ, and we will allow them to continue in their delusion, in their utter arrogance, until it backfires on them, and what they do will actually turn around for the greater good. So I do believe that all of this will backfire on them when more people start to sympathize with the Palestinians and stand up for them and begin to understand that this is a religious war, and they start looking into Islam. They start understanding why all of this is happening, and they start to make sense of the world. It's happened to a lot of people. A lot of people are embracing Islam as a result of these wars that are happening around the world against Muslims. And not only that, it's strengthening a lot of Muslim men in their faith. So a lot of people who are weak in their faith, who are, raised as Muslim, and they grew up, they were corrupt in their ways, they were immoral, they start to take religion seriously when they see what's happening to the Palestinians, and they wake up to the Quran verses and the ahadith about the end of times. So you'll find a lot of Muslims who will come back to the right path after seeing this for themselves, that, hold on, this is what the scholars have been telling us about, that this could be the war of the end of times, and it wakes them up. A lot of Muslims will wake up and they'll get better. So can you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows these wars and allows these hardships that other Muslims are going through for the greater good of the ummah? It will allow people to take the deen more seriously. It will allow people to take the ahadith more seriously and the Quran more seriously. Because, like I said before, there are so many YouTube videos now about all of this, about the Mahdi and the Dajjal and the signs of the end of times. This will wake up a lot of Muslims and they'll start to become serious about practicing Islam. Because now it's unfolding before their eyes and they're worried that they're going to die as disbelievers. So this is one of the many outcomes that can come out of a very distressing situation that has a beautiful purpose. So whether it's to help non-Muslims enter Islam and find Allah, or to improve the faith and the situation of the Muslims we have today in the Ummah and to help them be more serious about raising a better generation of Muslims who are believers. And never forget that these crises always show people's true colours. They always filter out the believers from the hypocrites and the non-believers. So, people's true beliefs will come out when you see who they stand up for, when you see who they support in these testing times. So, there are so many benefits that can come out of such a difficult calamity that helps everybody. Whether those people are influencers, celebrities, world leaders, you will know exactly where they stand when they are put in a very difficult situation, where they have to choose who they're going to support, or whether they just choose to stay silent, because staying silent is also a problematic response. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He uses these situations and calamities to open people's eyes to many things as well. To open people's eyes to the truth, to the hypocrites in society, to those who are true believers, to those who are truly, the non-believers, the kuffar in their hearts. They may act nice and be nice, but in their hearts they have a hatred towards Muslims and Islam and Arabs. There will be so much that will be exposed in these types of hardships. So don't have expectations of people. Honestly, save yourselves from a lot of disappointment and stop having expectations of people. Stop expecting all these world leaders to come together and fight for the cause of Palestine and fight for justice. Stop expecting celebrities and influential people and psychotherapists and everyone to stand up for the cause of Muslims because you believe them to be good people. So the quicker we can accept that we shouldn't have expectations of people, the more at peace we're going to be when we can accept, people's true colours when they eventually show. Because there's no point whatsoever in being so angry and furious and disappointed and depressed at the response of people whom you believe could actually make a massive impact on the situation, right? Whether it's by them speaking out, whether it's by military operation, whether it's by, stopping their support of the oppressor, whatever it is. It's you who's going to affect yourself by holding on to that anger that the people who should be doing something and can do something about it are not doing it. So we have to let go of that expectation, because at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that these people will be so blinded by their arrogance and their delusion and their ignorance that they're not going to do anything for the ummah. So why are we suffering? Why are we suffering on behalf of the delusion and the arrogance of other people? That's their problem to carry, that's their burden to carry, not ours. We do what's in our ability to do. We need to stop having these high expectations of other Muslims and leaders and imams and preachers and scholars when they are not blessed. They're not blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to actually, do something so big, because the reward is not theirs. Their reward is going to be for someone else who will step up and will fight for justice. It's not meant for them. So I just wanted to say my 2 cents on that, because I see a lot of people who are super angry at, scholars who are not saying anything and world leaders, and people forget that there are so many narcissists and psychopaths among us. Just because they look Muslim, just because they say Muslim, doesn't mean they're going to act as Muslims. Doesn't mean they're going to act as believers, because they're not believers. A believer will act. Someone who's not a believer will not and cannot. So we have to stop judging people from what they present on the outside and look at their history, look at their history of what they've ever stood up for, so that we know exactly who we're dealing with, and we can eliminate these unrealistic expectations of people who, there's never been any credible actions or strong actions that have been in the favour of the Muslim ummah. So they may have fought for other causes and justice in other causes, but when it comes to the ummah, they haven't. So when you know that people have a history of doing that and a habit of doing that they're happy to stand up for other causes, but not the causes that are dear to your heart, that are dear to your deen, then it's time to get rid of those expectations to save your own mental health. Even though the facts are there, it's very clear who's in the wrong. It's very clear who the true victim is. People will still stand for the oppressor because they are ruled by their qareen. They are delusional as a result of them being overpowered by their qareen. Stop listening to these people. Stop listening to the debates of people who make your blood boil. Who cares about what their opinions are? We have Allah and we know what Allah's promised, and we have faith in what Allah's promised. We don't care about the opinions of insignificant people like Piers Morgan. Who cares about his opinion? Who cares about the opinion of celebrities who sing and dance on stage? We don't care. As Muslim believers, we shouldn't care about the opinions of these people who have been put in a situation in which they have to have loyalty to the oppressor because they are being funded by the oppressor. And this leads me to speak about a highly effective way and productive way in which we can help the Palestinian cause and the cause of many Muslims around the world, and that is to boycott the companies of those funded by the oppressors. I really cannot say this enough. There are so many companies out there like Starbucks and McDonald's, just to name a couple out of thousands, who are supporting the soldiers of Iblis. Okay, they are providing free meals for them, free drinks for them. They are helping them to continue with their mission. And lots of profits from these companies are being donated to the oppressor. So have a look at what you buy on a regular basis that could be contributing towards the profits of these companies. Just sit down for 10 minutes and ask yourself, do I really need that Starbucks coffee every day? Do I really need that Frappuccino? Do I really need to buy that Big Mac? Do I really need to buy these products from these companies that I enjoy at the expense of my brothers and sisters out there? Do I really need to drink Coca-Cola when I can drink something else? Research the source of these companies, who they're funded by and who they support, and do yourselves a favour and do the Muslims a favour and boycott these companies, because it really, really affects them. It is so productive in helping the Muslims who are being tortured by the oppressors out there. When they get taken a hit in their profit, their stock market value plummets, and they will not be able to fund the oppressors in the way that they are right now. And unfortunately, millions and millions of Muslims around the world are funding the companies that are supporting the soldiers of Iblis. You have to look at it that way, because if you don't look at it that way, you will not understand the severity in the need to boycott these products and find better alternatives out there. Support Muslim companies. Support companies that are not supported by oppressors. And stop following influencers and celebrities who are endorsed and get paid by these oppressive companies to market their products. Stop following and supporting these influencers, because when you stop supporting them and following them, these companies will not be interested in endorsing these celebrities and influencers for their products. Okay? They will lose billions and billions of profits when Muslims come together to do this. You need to help your brothers and sisters all around the world by at least doing this. So you've got the power of dua with conviction, and you've got the boycotting of companies that you buy products from that are unnecessary. If it's absolutely necessary, that's something else. But I'm talking about, like I said, the Big Mac meals and the Happy Meals and the Starbucks coffees and everything. You can do without them. Find another company to buy from. You can do without them. And unfortunately, in all our Muslim countries, we have McDonald's on every corner. We have Starbucks now on every corner. They're laughing at us. Wallahi, they're laughing at us. And even the logo of the Starbucks company is of a god called Star. Like, you don't even know what you're supporting. A lot of Muslims are so ignorant And if they're not ignorant, they're careless. When they continue to buy from these companies after people tell them time and time again, they support the oppressive regimes. So if you are unable to donate money, then it is enough for you as a Muslim to focus on your dua, focus on your salah, boycott these companies, okay? Don't buy Israeli dates, don't buy any of that. And teach your children how to be proud of their Muslim identity. This is another thing that we really need to invest in. This is a way that we can help our ummah by allowing our children to understand that when we say no to McDonald's, they understand why. And they don't argue because they understand. They understand that the well-being and the welfare of their Muslim brothers and sisters around the world are more important than them having their happy meal. Instill that empathy in them so that they do consider them before they do things and buy things and want things and ask for things. When you say no, they understand. To the point where they won't even ask for it because they're developing a strong Muslim identity and they care about what's going on in the world. They care about their Muslim brothers and sisters who are their age on the battlefield. They are their age, 12, 13, 14, and they are standing up like true warriors in front of the oppressors. Teach them. Teach them about Palestine. Teach them about the deen. Make sure that they get a good Islamic education so that they are proud of who they are. And this will help the next generation to not only stop relying on these companies who support genocide, but also for them to be supportive in their dua and salah, to know that it's enough. To know that it's enough for them to be able to stand 5 times a day in prayer and pray for their brothers and sisters because they have that compassion, the compassion of a believer. That is your most important mission as a parent. Because what's coming is going to be harder. It's going to be tougher. What we're going to see, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And we need to prepare our children for that. So there's no point in living in guilt, living in shame, because you feel like you can't help them. You're in despair, you feel hopeless. You can help them. You can help them in so many ways. And I know people are getting bombarded, by all these charities, these Muslim charities asking people to donate. I absolutely cannot stand fundraising events and the way that they do them. I actually attended a fundraising event a few weeks ago. It was actually a part of a show that I attended with a friend, and I was horrified and so disgusted at how they were fundraising for Palestine. They were saying things like, if you are a beloved servant of Allah, raise your hand and donate 500, raise your hand and donate 100. And then someone will raise their hand and they'll clap for them and, oh, mashallah, look at this sister. A big round of applause for this sister who's donated £500 for Palestine. This is not the sunnah. This is not the sunnah of donating. Shaming people into not donating is not from the sunnah. It's not from the deen. Because what the guy also said is there will be people in this audience who will be affected by Iblis and they will not donate. They will not donate. You can't say that to people. There are people who are struggling to feed their own children in that audience. There are people who have lost their jobs, who are attending a show just to feel better for their mental health. They just want to feel better. They are struggling with the rising costs of living. So when you tell them that there will be people in this audience who will be affected by Iblis and not donate, they will be stingy and not dip into their pockets and donate money today for the cause of Palestine, you're going to, again, faith shame people into not being able to do what you're saying is the obligation. Refer to my previous podcast about faith shaming Muslims. I see a lot of faith shaming when people do not donate in these fundraising events. They are looked at, they are looked at in the audience, and they're just made to feel like they are so stingy, that they are so worthless, that they are not good Muslims because of the way the fundraising events are carried out. This is not the sunnah. I got up and I left. I was so disgusted I got up and I left because it made everyone feel really awkward and very uncomfortable, because he was picking at people. He was saying, come on, can't you pay £25? Can't you pay £20 a month? Can't you do this? Can't you do that? I'm sat there horrified. I'm telling you, if the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was there watching that absolute circus show of a fundraising event, he would have been disgusted. He would have been disgusted. And he would have put an end to it immediately. I'm telling you, I got up and I left, and I saw the guy look at me, and I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking, damn, Iblis has got that one. I didn't care. Sadaqah has to come from the heart. When you donate, it has to come from the heart. And unfortunately, again, Iblis takes advantage of situations like this and crises, because everyone's asking for donations, and you'll find a lot of narcissistic scammers. There will be a lot of narcissistic scammers among us who will take advantage of vulnerable Muslims who are being affected emotionally by the bombardment of, distressing photos and videos of what's happening, and they will get money out of them. And it's happening a lot. This is happening a lot. Please be careful who you donate to. Check the source and the reputation of the charity that you wish to donate to. It's a great thing that people can come together and donate, but there are lots of scammers out there. And I'm just really against all of these ads that pop up every 5 minutes. Imagine this was your child and you've got nothing to eat. This is not the Sunnah way of doing it. Why should people have to imagine that this is their child? You are sending these ads out to people who have just lost a child, who have gone through a miscarriage, who can't conceive, who've just, faced the death of a parent. Like when people are seeing these ads day in, day out, every time they use social media, these people who are doing so-called charity, they are crippling the mental health of people who are viewing these ads even more. There's no need for them to say, imagine this was your child, imagine this was your father, imagine this house had fallen on you and your family. That's how they start the videos of the ads. And I find it very emotionally manipulative. I find that they do it deliberately. It's a narcissistic tactic, by the way, to get people to pay money. So they appeal to people's empathy, and they appeal to the ways in which empaths can be emotionally manipulated. So when we tell them these things, when we ask them to put themselves in the shoes of those who are being slaughtered and killed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't ask us to do that. Allah told us to be compassionate, but He didn't tell us that we have to suffer the same pain that they are suffering, because Allah knows they can handle it and we can't handle it. If we could handle it, we'd be in that situation. So asking people in adverts to put themselves in the shoes of those who are going through such a hardship, and then feeling guilty because you're unable to do it, and now you feel like, I can't do it. I can't put myself in in that person's shoes, in that person's situation. And you close the ad, you close everything about Palestine, and then you feel even worse about yourself. You feel like, why can't I feel it? Why can't I get over this guilt that I feel that these people are living a difficult life and I have it easy? That guilt creeps in because of all the content that you keep seeing. This is not Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs you to be strong. He needs you to be strong mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, so that you can fulfill the mission that He has set for you in this dunya. You need to be healthy and strong to do that. You can't do that if you're weak. How is depression and anxiety and guilt going to benefit you and serve you when not only are they suffering, but you yourself are suffering as well, and now you can't continue with your mission, and now you are struggling to be a good Muslim because you're living in trauma. You're now taking on their trauma, you're taking on their hardships, and you're taking on that pain, and that pain is causing you to not be able to progress in life. It's causing a hindrance in your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given you that burden to take on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just wants you to believe and pray and do whatever you can in your situation, in the life that you live, to help them. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not asking us to live the same traumas that they have. Everyone has their own traumas to deal with. And like I said, everyone's traumas are given to them in accordance to what they can handle. Stop taking on the burdens and the traumas of other people. That's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked you to do. He's asked you to help the Palestinians and other Muslims who are being tortured in the world in your own unique way. So if you're an artist, maybe you could, paint canvases and sell them, and then the profits could go to charity. If you are someone who is great at public speaking, you could create awareness. If you are great at cooking, maybe you could do a charity, bake sale, or there's something you can do with the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, with the ability Allah's given you. If you don't have the money to donate, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Charity can also be praying for people and praying for the easing of their suffering. When you are praying for the easing of someone's suffering, this is a charity because you're thinking of that person. You want what's good for that person. This is a sadaqah. And it's a sadaqah because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to answer that dua. Ad'uni astajib lakum. Pray to me, make dua to me, I will answer you. That dua will come to me. I will deal with that dua. It's a sadaqah. When you have absolutely nothing to give, when you feel absolutely helpless and hopeless, know that your dua is valuable because it goes to Allah. Allah receives it. Allah receives every tiny request. And when you pray for other people, the angels who are with you at the time of dua, at the time of salah, they say Ameen, and for you too. You'll get the same mercy that you are praying for other people. The good that you mention in your dua for other people, you'll get it as well. So never undermine the power of dua. The power of dua has split an ocean. It split the moon. It caused a human being to be saved from the belly of a whale deep in the ocean. It has made the barren women pregnant, and it has given victory to the hopeless. Never undermine the power of dua. This is a grave mistake a lot of Muslims make. We need to change our perception of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to glorify Him in His ultimate power. All your du'as are not going to waste. They are being saved for a day when Allah knows that they will be fulfilled. Allah knows when that day will be. All these prayers for the victory of Palestine and the freeing of Palestine from the hands of the oppressors, all of these will be answered, just not yet. Allah knows when the right time is. So don't feel guilty for living an easier life than other Muslims who are having it hard. Don't allow your qareen to push you into having suicidal thoughts and being depressed. Don't allow your qareen to stop you from being productive in life. You help this ummah by being productive. You help this ummah by supporting other Muslims. You help this ummah by boycotting those who support the oppressors. You help this ummah in a massive way by utilising your talents and your gifts and your knowledge for the greater good. So actually those Muslims who are being oppressed and victimised in genocides, they actually need your talents. They need your help. They need your dua. And you can only be of benefit for them when you are strong mentally, spiritually and physically. So don't allow Iblis to cripple your mental health and cripple your iman because of what you're seeing. Don't subject yourself to too much coverage on the situation. Know that whatever you're going to see is going to be disturbing. So if you're someone who is already struggling with your own mental health and you feel that you just cannot bear it anymore, but you feel guilty switching off from it, don't. Your mental health here comes first. Okay, put your mental health first. Work on yourself. because you're not going to be of any benefit to this ummah if we lose another person to Iblis. We cannot lose the faith of another person. This ummah needs more believers. It needs stronger believers. So prioritize your mental health. Switch off from whatever you need to switch off from. And be content with the little you can do for Palestine. Be content with it. Be content with your dua. Allow yourself to see your dua as being very powerful. Never undermine it, never belittle it. This is not the way of the believers. This is not what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us to do. He told us that when we make dua, we have to believe that Allah is going to fulfill it and answer it in the best way possible, and inshallah in an even better way than we expected. We have to have that perception of Allah. So I hope that this podcast has given you some comfort. I hope that it's helped everyone who is suffering and everyone who feels that they are helpless in this situation. I hope inshallah it's given you some peace and some reassurance that everyone can do something. We can all make a big difference. We all just have to do it collectively. We all have to come together and boycott together and bring our talents together and our strengths together. We have to do that for each other. We have to lift each other up. We can't be bringing each other down over these situations, because these situations are going to continue. Oh, we haven't seen the end of it. We haven't seen the end of it. There are going to be many more wars to come. There are going to be many more hardships to come. We still haven't entered the time of the Dajjal. There are things that are going to happen, hardships that we're going to endure, that our children and our grandchildren are going to endure, that we need to prepare them for from now. We need to build up that iman. We need to build up that perception that they have of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being the most magnificent, the almighty, the all-merciful. We have to teach our children to see Allah in the most amazing way so that they enjoy making dua. They have hope when making dua. They have, more conviction when they pray. It's not just a chore. They see Allah in such a magnificent way that their du'as have an even bigger impact because they believe. So if we allow ourselves to be crippled mentally, spiritually, physically by every calamity that happens to Muslims around the world, we won't get anywhere as an ummah. We're not going to get anywhere. We have to prepare ourselves for a continuation of this until the Mahdi comes. There will be more of this, unfortunately. Like I said, it will get worse before it gets better. So when you know that there is potentially worse to come, we can be in a better mental state to prepare for it. We won't allow it to destroy us. We won't allow it to leave us completely hopeless and faithless. Okay? So I'll end it here, inshallah. Please do share this podcast with anyone who needs to hear it, anyone who needs a boost in their morale, and may Allah give all the Muslims around the world who are suffering the most wonderful victory, and it will come. Inshallah, that day is coming, and we pray that Allah eases their suffering and gives them the highest ranks of Jannah, inshallah. And may Allah allow us to taste martyrdom in our own jihad and nafs. We are all fighting our own jihad, our own holy war within ourselves with our qareen. And those who die trying to the best of their ability will also attain martyrdom, because you're doing it fi sabilillah. You're doing it for the sake of Allah. Martyrdom comes in many different ways. The highest rank of it will be those who are subjected to such horrific crimes like this, but it doesn't take away from the grandness of being able to fight your own jihad and nafs, which is the battle within yourself with your ego against your qareen. If you manage to fight that and overpower your qareen, if you even die trying, you will die as a shaheed, inshallah. You will die as a martyr, because when you fight your qareen, you fight Iblis. And if you fight Iblis and you overpower Iblis and you die as a believer, you die fi sabilillah. So we can all be martyrs in our own ways. We just have to find the ways in which we can do our part so that we can also feel that we are doing something for our deen, okay? That we're doing something to protect this ummah and to preserve whatever's stable from it. And that could be our own family unit. And if we don't have families, then it can be the state of our heart. So having iman as a believing Muslim in this ummah is a worthy enough contribution towards the standing of this ummah. Okay, as long as there is one believing person in this ummah, we still have Islam. Okay, so never belittle your iman and your contribution to this ummah by allowing yourself to work on overpowering your qareen and the soldiers of Iblis in your life, whether they be from the ins or the jinn, humans or the jinn. Okay, so I hope this podcast has been beneficial. If I've missed anything, just drop it in the comments below. I'm happy to answer your questions, and thank you so much for listening. If you're still here with me, please share this podcast, please like it, and subscribe to this channel for more related content. If you're new to this channel, I welcome you. Please do have a look at the previous podcast so that you can make sense of what I say about the qareen and everything else. And I do provide one-to-one counselling and coaching services. Just drop me an email, author@themuslimnarcissist.com. And if you haven't grabbed a copy of the book yet, it's called The Muslim Narcissist. It's available on Amazon in many countries. So do have a read of that. It will help you to make sense of yourself, your family, the world, your marriage and everything. So I hope you find it a healing read, inshallah. So thank you again for listening, and until the next podcast, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.